Thank you all for being here so much. I think that last speech kind of incorporated some notes that are really helpful in thinking about this particular panel. And I think it started around the conversation of having a cancer buddy, somebody who had been through this, who understood having a community. And I think that is a huge part of the conversation we're going to have during this panel. I remember when my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, I went with her to all the meetings, and one of the meetings was where they laid out kind of everything that was going to happen. Here's your diagnosis, these are the types of treatments, and they kind of sped through that really quickly, and we spent the final 2 hours talking about community and support groups and putting people in touch with each other. And at the time, I didn't really understand why that happened. And now, after going through 2 years of treatment with her, I understand it, I think, a little bit better. But Judith, I wanted to hear your story a little, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your diagnosis and the Facebook group that you're a part of.
Well, I was originally diagnosed in 2006, and then it came back as a new primary 10 years later. And at that particular point, I was looking for support. Now, 10 years ago, I have a twin sister who also went through this at the same time, and she has arthritis, and she was looking at cancer as, wait, this can sort of be once and done. Right? And if it's once and done, I don't want to be identified as a survivor. I don't want to be identified with breast cancer. And neither of us really looked for support. Yeah. And that really worked for me. But this next time around, everything had changed. And the biggest thing was genomics. No one was really talking intimately about tumor biology. And I was immediately depressed because I had an idea of what this was supposed to look like, and then it became something very different. So I was looking around for support groups. The in real life support groups weren't really working. I went through a few Facebook groups, and then I found one that fit. And it's called Breast Cancer Straight Talk Support. And it's run by this wonderful British mother. She's just a hoot and a half. She lives at a place called Berwick-on-Tweed, which sounds like a PBS kind of special, an odd place. And she's just as odd as the name of that place, and wonderful. So, she has 3 kids, and she's just out there in a very unedited way. And that really drew me. And within 3 months, she asked me to be an admin. Now, we started out at 2,000, and we're now at 15,000. And we do no outreach whatsoever. It was not our intention to grow a group, but it happened. And one thing that was special about my group is Harvard University did a case study, and that really helped us focus on what we wanted to do, what the challenges were, what the problems were, how it worked, how it didn't work, and that influenced it. I think when people come to us, they like the name, Breast Cancer Straight Talk, and Celine is stunning. You see this beautiful face looking out at you, and those two things that is what drew me in. Yeah. Also, we allow people to talk about cancer any way they want, so there's a lot of effing going around. But that's important, I think we have the idea of, the cancer warrior, and that's so much better than the cancer victim, which is what we used to be. But there are so many different expressions of that. Sometimes, you just need to spit bricks at this thing. And other times, you just need to get the yayas out. And other times, you find your own inspiration. And you see that in the group. The other thing that's unique is we are all stages. So the thing about that group is that people do recur. I have myself. I am now stage 4. I started as stage 2. I'm now stage 4. And we have figured out how all of that fits. But that's a really important component. And then our ages are 24 to 88. And that works really well in a group in a way that it doesn't in real life. Because like a lot of the younger women will say, well, I feel so uncomfortable in a group. If there are a lot of 50-year-olds, we have an hour. I'm concerned about sex. They're not, because that ship has sailed. And there's a truth to that. But when you're in a group, you can sort of quickly, go through things, see what your interests are. And the intergenerational thing is so, so powerful among the women. So, and we're very international. That's also nice.
Were you active on social media before this?
Twitter, but not Facebook.
Yeah.
If I were not doing this group, I would not be on Facebook. I shouldn't say that. Facebook is... but that's the truth. I think we all live in a certain place in social media. Yeah. Maybe that's Twitter or YouTube or Facebook, but that wasn't where I lived. It was more Twitter for me.
Yeah. Miriam, I want to talk a little bit about, so normally when I hear the words health and the internet, I get a little concerned because I have ideas of people, Googling their symptoms and coming up with lots of things that they shouldn't be, self-diagnosing with. I'm wondering, what do you think? We've obviously heard some of the great upside of the ability to build community. Can you talk a little bit, as a doctor, about some of the positives and some of the things that give you a little bit of pause?
Sure. So every doctor, when they go see a patient, we know that it's me, the doctor, and Dr. Google. We're all in there together. And, it's easy as a physician, especially as an oncologist, to be a little annoyed by that, be a little upset by that, because it's competition, right? So I actually just came over from ASCO, where I gave a talk on this topic, and I shared that there was a research study from the Washington University, and they asked their patients who were getting cancer treatment, why are you online? What are you looking for? What information are you looking for? So you have majority of patients looking for information to discuss with their doctor, right? They're doing research on Google. And then you have 40% of patients looking to verify information that their doctors told them. So it's like, which one do you want, right? So we want to help our patients. That's our only goal. Sometimes a little information is dangerous in the sense that it can make patients very, very anxious. But to me, it's an unsolvable problem. So we shouldn't see it as a problem, right? Google is not going away. Social media is not going away. It's along a similar vein. People say, well, what about all the negatives of social media? People share about alternative, as in fake treatment. People share about anti-vaxxing. Clearly social media is dangerous, right? It's convincing people to do things that are bad for their health. That's the argument. And what I say back is, it's not going away. So we have to use social media to help educate people, help bring people together, help bring doctors and patients together. It should never be that a patient wants to enroll in a clinical trial but can't find one. We have social media. Let's help them find the trial.
Yeah, and you see that as the role of doctors and care providers on social media, kind of being able to both point out areas maybe of misinformation and also being able to connect people with resources?
Yeah, so I think that the potential of social media for cancer care is limitless. I think we're really only starting to see some of the incredible advantages that it has to change the paradigm of cancer care and help solve problems that we've been struggling with for a very long time. So, education, in terms of educating other physicians and educating patients, and the other way, physicians being educated by patients what they need. We were talking about before, informed consent. What do patients want to hear? How do they want to be consented for chemotherapy or radiation? How do patients want to be enrolled in clinical trials? There's so many problems, and there's, in my view, so many ways that we can solve them. We just have to use the tools and create new solutions.
Yeah. Monica, I want to come to you, and I think a lot of the conversation, and rightfully so, is always centered on care and health, but there's obviously a patient's entire life that continues to go on or needs to be changed and adapt. And as a lawyer, you were there to really help think through those. I'm wondering if you can talk us through a little bit of what your work is and what some of the critical things that people generally come to you not knowing are.
Yeah, so in my work as a cancer rights attorney and with our organization at Triage Cancer, we're focused on providing education around the legal and practical issues that come up. So we can have all of the best chemotherapies and treatments in the world, but if people can't access them because they don't have health insurance, or they can't take time off work, or they can't find transportation to the hospital, then that treatment really isn't as valuable anymore. So we're really focused on providing that education. And I have to laugh a little bit because we joke in our office, don't confuse Google with my law degree, because we get some of the same types of things where people will come to us and say, I heard in my, Facebook group or on Twitter that, I have the right to do this. And then we sort of have to explain to them, well, that's not actually how the law works, or the devil's in the details. So I agree. The devil's in the details.
Well,
Apparently we can be best friends.
I say cancer treatment is all about the details.
Yes.
The details are everything.
Absolutely. And there's
I
no
think it works.
And there's no one-size-fits-all solution to any of this. No two people's story is going to look exactly the same. So, I think that while we think that social media and the internet is such a valuable tool for community, where you might not be able to get it, for information, where maybe you aren't able to get it or to verify it, there are some downsides to it too. Yeah. So, we have a lot of conversations around disclosure. And what we hear from a lot of people is they've disclosed, however that is, whether it's with family and friends, or they've shouted it from the rooftops, or it's all over Twitter. And then there are ramifications to that disclosure. So they're not able to find a job, or things have changed in their workplace, or we hear about it in relationships and dating. So while we think it's really valuable and there's definitely a space and a place for it, we want people to be making really educated decisions about disclosure, how much they're disclosing, to whom, and then to know their rights. Yeah. That they don't necessarily have to disclose.
Yeah. Judith, I'm wondering how much of what we just heard from Miriam and Monica feels resonant with what you guys discuss in your group.
It's very resonant, and I have to say that I'm somebody who's very evidence-based. I will always say, what does your doctor say? The very first thing that I say. I call myself the fairy bug mother. I am that person. Because we will see things that come up medically, and someone is, well, should I go to the hospital? And I have 104 fever, but I don't want to seem like I'm complaining. And we will encourage it. I also have physicians in my group who will say, Judith, encourage this one to see the doctor. And so that's part of what I do. We try to take people from where they are about alternatives and try to figure out what is the messaging that's going to work. So there's the evidence-based studies. I have some great scientists who are helping me with the messaging, but also support. Sometimes people are going through alternatives because they think they don't hurt or they don't have the money. And we very much, I actually refer to your site when people ask about these issues about financial toxicity. There's so much that's really not understood about how disability works. A lot of misunderstandings. And just the idea that what you want to do is protect assets, whatever that looks like. And then people come from all different walks of life. So if they're not used to thinking about that, I'd love to talk with you more about that. But,
Absolutely.
But that's what I personally do. I try to keep control of that as an admin.
Yeah. And so I think one of the things we've got out this is there's obviously no kind of one-size-fits-all scenario. But you think a lot about how cancer is portrayed and the experiences of cancer are portrayed in popular culture. I'm wondering how you think entertainment has shaped kind of the view of culture in our society.
Well, I think the first thing that people would say is, I see so much that is inaccurate on TV and in film.
Yes.
And I think that that's, especially if you know the real story, it becomes very apparent when you see those stories how much they get it wrong. And I think what you have to remember about Hollywood is they don't set out to get it wrong. Writers, which is where this often starts, they write what they know. And while most people probably know somebody who has cancer, because I think most of us do, that's a story of one, and they certainly are not educated in the larger way. And so it's important to remember that what they're often writing is sort of a reflection. It's this weird echo chamber of stereotypes to which they have been exposed when they were watching TV as a young person or going to the movies. And so some of these tropes become embedded in the Hollywood mechanism of telling stories. And so because we do think a lot about this, and there's a lot of literature that demonstrates the way in which people, whether you want film and television to be this or not, it is an accidental form of curriculum. People do learn, and those things do get embedded. So when you talk about Google being a source, I mean, listen, this will certainly date me, but Marcus Welby, MD, used to receive a lot of letters asking for advice on personal health care. And part of this is because, certainly in a clinical situation, you only have so much time with a patient. You only have so much opportunity to get to know that person. But think about it. That doctor that's in your living room, whether it's Dr. Welby or Dr. House, if you're thinking in more modern terms, that doctor is in your living room every week. Now that doctor's in your lap because you're binge watching, and you know what that doctor had for dinner and what his golf score is or her golf score, and you feel comfortable, even though at some level you know this person is not real. You still want to be able to reach out, just like you're reaching onto social media and you're trying to find answers. So the work we do is to try to make sure that it's not always about accuracy, and that's a hard and bitter pill to swallow.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is about inspiration, and it's about the stories that move people emotionally. And so what we do is we introduce writers, directors, producers, filmmakers of all stripe. We introduce them to new people and new stories, because that's how you change the narrative. They don't know what they don't know. So we just by the it's about inspiration, it's about imagery, it's the power of introduction. And so we bring people in because stories are so powerful.
Yeah.
And when they hear stories like this is in their head. This is what they write.
And do you find the entertainment industry to be receptive and excited about telling those more diverse stories?
Incredibly excited. We started the Science and Entertainment Exchange 10 years ago, and I will admit it was a little tough at the beginning because the National Academy of Sciences could not just ride in on a white horse and say, we are here to save science, engineering, and medicine. But on the other hand, I think what we did do is we did not present ourselves as the accuracy police. I think it was really important not to use that A word. Even though in our heart of hearts, and we try not to say it out loud, accuracy really, really does matter to us. But you kind of have to be on the DL with that. You can't say that. And then it becomes easier to have the conversation because they do want to get it right. And so we find that these stories, they live and die by stories. That is a treasure trove for them. So yes, they are open to it. And once we say, we can introduce you to, we can tell this story, we can do this for you, it is easy to make that invitation. It genuinely is.
Yeah. So I have a few more questions for our panel, but I do want to let the audience know that we will be coming to you for questions in just a second. There are mic runners on either side, so if you could start thinking about your questions now, whittle them on down, and then when I call for questions, get those hands up high. So I was hoping we could do a lightning round where you just tell the entire audience, if there was one thing that you wish that people knew, whether it's the public or nurses or doctors, about how to relate to cancer patients and those caring for them to kind of make their lives easier or make them feel more understood or accepted, what would that be, Judith?
Well, I think decide what level of support you can give. Don't say you can do something and not do it because you're taking the place of somebody who would be there. I have found the kindness of strangers to be real. And I do believe needs can be met, but maybe not by who you want and the way you want, but they can be met.
Yeah.
I like to tell patients that even the most well-meaning friends and family, if they're not helping you, you got to shut them down. There are way too many people out there. Everyone has an opinion on your cancer and what you should do. You get to decide, and you get to tell people, thank you. I decided to take care of my cancer. I'm going with this doctor that I trust, at this hospital that I trust, with this trial that I trust, and just shut it down. Let them offer to help you in another way.
I think that's good life advice.
Oh, yeah.
But what I would tell people is there are resources out there. It may not feel like it. It may be hard to find, but there are definitely resources out there. One of my favorite things about ASCO is I get to see all the great patient advocates that are out there that we email with all the time and we partner with, and we get to see each other in real life offline. But there are so many resources, but there is a lack of connection sometimes. And I think that as a community, we need to do a better job in the connection piece.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I would like to say that there are a diversity of stories, and that the narrative of the hopeless story of cancer is one that they don't have to tell over and over. It's always great to have that great emotion, but there's a lot of emotion in surviving too.
Yeah. Right, do we have any audience questions?
Somebody must have a question, come on.
Were you waving your hand back there for a reason, or there's one right there?
Oh, this is for Judith, and I'm wondering whether you have some stories about disclosures within the safety of your group that have really helped people.
I think the biggest thing that people have to get their minds around is what happens after cancer ends, because there are no guarantees. The no guarantees part is the hardest part of all of this. You know, so much of it is, I think, a physical challenge, but the mental challenge of not knowing is what's really, really hard for people. And so then when we hear stories of people who have sort of figured this out for themselves, have figured out how to live aware, not scared. It's a tough one, but how do you live aware, not scared? And we find examples of that. How do you literally put this in your rearview mirror? And there are ways of doing it. So I think those stories, and it's very different for everybody. I mean, I think one of the things that we stress is it's very individual. You know, no two stories are alike. So when you're in the group, don't get scared, because this may not be you. I mean, I'm stage 4, and I tell everybody, I've just improved your odds. I'm stage 4, and your odds are now better as a result. And so I just think you find inspiration where you find it.
Yeah. I'm also wondering how you all think about managing, and this goes to the idea of like what a cancer patient looks like in a movie versus your actual life where you're out living and having to do all of your normal things while also living with this diagnosis. I'm wondering, Miriam, I'm hoping you can speak to this. How much more common is that experience than somebody who we see on TV who is sitting in bed and then at the end it's either completely miraculous recovery and everything is great, or it goes the other way and it's sad but it's over. Like, there seems to be a lot of gray area in between there that we're not talking about.
Yeah, so people ask me all the time, isn't it sad? Don't you find it difficult being an oncologist? And I say, no, not at all. Most of my patients are cured. Most of my patients do really, really well. Most of my patients, when you meet them on the street, you would never know that they have cancer or that they're actively undergoing treatment for cancer. It's incredible. It's just unbelievable. So, you know, and I sort of wanted to comment also about, you know, I understand that, you know, media, you know, they want to tell stories that, you know, move people, but there's also a social responsibility to portray things accurately because, like you said, it's a form of education and people are learning. You know, they see Angelina Jolie, you know, had a double mastectomy. All of a sudden, everyone thinks that they need to do that. Yeah. That's ridiculous. But doctors have a responsibility, right, to listen to our patients and, you know, give them the care that they request, as long as, again, we think that it's reasonable. But, you know, a double mastectomy is a very good example of that, where there's very good data that shows that the women who choose for bilateral prophylactic double mastectomy, meaning they have breast cancer in one breast, they don't have breast cancer in the other breast, who chooses to get a bilateral prophylactic mastectomy? Educated women from high socioeconomic status, meaning women who, you know, are scared off by the media. I mean, that's the reality. They're being scared into doing something. So there is a social responsibility, and I agree with you. We do need to share stories about patients with cancer who don't look sick, who are cured, who with stage 4 are living with, not like your sister with arthritis, a chronic illness. And that is incredible, and we're seeing it more and more and more.
Yeah. Monica, I'm wondering how many people you get kind of throughout the entire course of this, not just kind of when they're first diagnosed and they're worried about disclosure. What are some of the issues that you deal with all the way through?
So, in fact, I wish I could talk to more people at the moment of diagnosis, because I have a lot of things I'd share with them so that they could make educated decisions. But definitely we talk quite a bit about employment issues. So there's this big misconception that, oh, in America we have FMLA, so I can take time off from work to get treatment. But again, the devil's in the details, and there are so many Americans that aren't covered by the FMLA. We talk a lot about the idea that under the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, there are tools that can help people work through treatment or go back to treatment. And we see a lot of people who are battling assumptions. So it's assumptions from their doctors who say, oh, you have this cancer diagnosis, there's no way you could work, go out on disability. without having a conversation about if that's what the patient wants. Because there's a lot of people who want to keep working. They're battling assumptions from their employers, who think they can't possibly still be a good employee now that they have this cancer diagnosis. And then they're battling their own assumptions. How could I possibly work and continue to be this great employee now that I have this cancer diagnosis? So a lot of work issues, a lot about health insurance. I don't know if you know health insurance in this country. Not the simplest thing to navigate, so we talk a lot about that, and a lot about finances. Unfortunately, the finances is a major topic.
Yeah. Well, I could stay up here all day talking to you all about this, but we want to leave some space for everyone else. Thank you so much, and please join me in thanking our panel.
Thank you.